Minecraft was the game that broke the world. The simplistic, creative, and playful game would dominate sites like YouTube. It absolutely revolutionized sandbox games, if not just games as a whole. Every corner you turned on the internet, Minecraft was there. Or some cheap copy seemed to be involved somehow. YouTube videos became Minecraft. Sandbox games became Minecraft. Merchandise, stories, theories, costumes, the internet became Minecraft. And in a world dominated by everyone copying each other with everything feeling nearly identical, one longtime indie developer decided to release a game that would change the horror genre forever. They would develop the most intricate story, the most consistently entertaining, and above all, the most terrifying game I have ever laid my eyes on. Five Nights at Freddy's. The man behind it, of course, being Scott Cawthon, the man on the brink of quitting game developing after 20 years of failed games. And let me tell you, what he was about to create would push him far from quitting for a long time. I'm about to cover the entire history of the FNAF series up to this point. However, don't expect me to dive deep into the actual lore outside of parts that I either find good, bad, or just really interesting. Although I will be talking about the story's ending extensively because it's important for certain reasons. This video is mainly covering the real life lore, if you will. The story of how FNAF and Scott went from nothing to conquering the internet. So, enjoy the video. The first Five Nights at Freddy's was released in late 2014 and found itself at the tail end of a specific transition on YouTube. Minecraft had succeeded so well on YouTube because of the new importance of watch time, therefore making easy to produce longer YouTube videos much more popular online. And this, combined with Markiplier's viral playthrough of the series, would begin the avalanche that would create FNAF's effects on the internet. Hi! Oh god damn it! Now, Markiplier wasn't the only person to play FNAF, nor was he the only one to make it popular. But he is the only one with billions of views over it. But we aren't here to talk about YouTube, we're here to talk about the game. And the game is so good. I mean, after years of having played these games, it's obviously more boring nowadays than it was during the first playthrough, but that doesn't take anything away from the fact that... Gotcha. The game was just such an amazing blend of scary, intense, funny, simple, complex, haunting, and filled with Easter eggs and little secrets. I felt like this was one last passion project to send off game development for Scott. And in trying to make this one, he filled it with details and game mechanics that truly made it one of a kind. The sound and visuals kick the horror aspect up to 11 as the element of mystery creeps over every decision you make. And of course, the designs of the main four characters were great. It's a clever parallel to Chuck E. Cheese, making them fun for kids and horrifying for everyone else. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, all with unique paths, interactions with the cameras, and jump scares. It's crazy how quickly they go from innocent robots to horrifyingly quick murder machines. And that is what I love about the game. Oh, and of course, this was before the series became A series, and B, lore heavy. So that made the murder mystery, scary story aspect of the Easter eggs that much more fun, as it was just one fun and interesting adventure. Even though, yes, after a while it does become repetitive and even can get boring, it still manages to surprise you and keep you on your toes multiple times. And the game ended up blowing up across the internet, creating a huge fan base, loads of content, and a sequel. But the simple truth is that this game was quickly revolutionizing what was the underwhelming horror genre in gaming, and which its sequels would soon be upending everything about it. But the simplistic aspect of FNAF made it seem impossible to follow up without it feeling like a direct copy. I mean, it's so simple that it's complex. How do you one-up this? Well, just ask Scott Cawthon, because he somehow did it. FNAF 2 was the least and most expected game of late 2014, as the original was so successful it was bound to eventually fall to corporatization and getting milked to death by... Wait, I think I have the wrong script. FNAF stayed in the hands of Scott himself throughout it all, and FNAF 2 was no different, and the game was great. It built perfectly over what the first game had built, and only hindered in the fact that with time, it became more stressful than scary. This game saw the inclusion of Mangle, the puppet, the toy animatronics, and absolutely no one else. You had no doors, making the reveal of a nearby robot all the more terrifying, because one wrong move with the new Freddy mask you were given would lead to your death. The game is pretty simple after a while, but it takes you a lot of skill to make it genuinely boring because of it. Because again, one wrong move can send your OP strat down the drain. The toy animatronics yet again were sweet at first, but after an hour or two, but there was also the addition of the first game's animatronics dismantled, or unfinished, or I don't really remember this part of the lore. The original Bonnie and Chica are friggin' terrifying in this game, and the trailer did nothing to help their reputation. The puppet was a weird mix of annoying, clever, stressful, and scary. As winding the music box became more of a hassle, failing to do so became one of the scariest parts of the game, as the music just plays and plays and plays, and Mangle was cool, a little useless, but had fun ties to the story. And speaking of the story, this game began the inclusion of the death cutscenes. Every now and then after you die, you get some sort of scene or game that would continue the actual lore built into it. That's right, this game began the actual lore. Dead kids, the Bite of 87, souls, wandering animatronics, the puppet, and living robots. It was just such a fun addition, he says after mentioning murder victims. Also, I would just want to say that this game literally started the trend of post-death scenes. Like, what other game was doing that before FNAF? And this was only one of like 50 things that this series would add to the horror genre, as there would be one more final game, all centered around the newly introduced purple guy, and one final fight against him. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 became one of the most hyped up games of the year, with its very mysterious teasers, fun trailers, and thriving fanbase. After less than a year of games, we had made it to the very last one, FNAF 3, a boss fight against the one and only Springtrap. Through connecting more post-death scenes, little Easter eggs, and puzzles, the community was eventually able to find out that A, there was someone in Springtrap, B, the person inside is this purple guy from the last game that murdered children, and C, he always comes back. Very weird thing to say for the last game of the series, Scott. Anyways, with all the hype and the supposed fix to the stress-inducing aspects of FNAF 2, the game was released early, and the responses were mixed. This is when people genuinely got interested in dissecting the story and finding details, but the gameplay was a mess. The game was easy as hell. The first night literally had no threats, and the rest of the game boiling down to switching between two cameras and playing audio. Every now and then you need to check the vents and fix your ventilation or audio bugs, but it's really easy overall. It does look very nice, definitely an improvement from but also the idea of there only being one main animatronic does fit with the fact that this was sort of a fight against the murderer of the multiple kids. But not just any kids, the exact ones we've known from the previous games. So he was a great idea. The only problem was Springtrap wasn't scary. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and act like that first marionette interaction isn't absolutely horrifying, along with some surprises and when you first meet the hallucinations, but it's just overall not a horror game. It's an easy strategy game with some cool stories and little jump scares. And with such an underwhelming end that not only wasn't scary, confusing, and easy, but also just raised more questions than answered, it was quickly skipped over as Scott announced the final chapter of FNAF. This is it. It all comes down to an end, with FNAF 4. Yeah, sorry, this was a short section. The game was very clever and fun when you didn't know what you were doing. Like I said, I love the feel that this game has. It looks and sounds great. But it's really just like any other scary game at the time, but easier. I'm a massive fan of this game's story, so I'm glad this game had a real push for that, as they showed how Springtrap came to be, how and what happened to the dead kids' souls after they were killed. And it introduced the idea of spring locks and possessed animatronics with dead kids in them. So this game just doesn't have a lot at face value. But the next one sure did. FNAF 4, yet again, was one of the most anticipated games that I can even think of from this time. The build-up was insane. MatPat was all over this thing before it was even out, and it was different. The game was completely different looking from just the trailers, along with these horrifying designs. Oh my, just like that, the game was ready to be released within months, and okay, never mind, I mean weeks. And actually, you know what? Scott just kind of feels like releasing it tomorrow instead. Anyways, the game opens up already with some weird 2D gameplay, hammering in some story. This kid, sad, Fredbear, creepy dolls? Later we would learn that this is Evan, the sad kid. His dad talks to him with the Fredbear doll, and he's also just a fan of the Freddy's restaurant, so he has toys of them. Also, his dad just so happens to be that child murderer I talked about being in Springtrap, don't worry about it. Anyways, the game starts, and holy hell, this is different. The first few times you play this game are genuinely terrifying. Scott is a genius for making sound so important. You have to turn up the volume to hear the breathing, only to have a nuke dropped on us when... However, a similar problem found in the last game started to rise in this one, which was, after a little while, it's literally just the same over and over and over. The Freddy dolls were hilarious. I mean, a little spooky, but overall pretty dumb inclusion. Foxy was the easiest little shit to deal with, while Bonnie and Chico were pretty balanced across the board. Plushtrap was whatever, as was Nightmare, but Nightmare Fredbear was honestly pretty cool and difficult. The game again looked great, but it was just not scary after a while. However, this is easily forgiven with the emphasis on story. Oh my gosh, the story in this game expands like crazy. Basically, the Bite of 87 was this huge point in the last two games. Why? I don't actually remember why it became such a huge topic, but it did. And even though this game didn't actually have that, our prayers were answered when this little dipshit, Michael Afton, decided to shove his brother's face into an animatronic's mouth. Something we learned in the last game is that the spring-locked suits I talked about earlier have horrible springs that pop back into its main show appearance for only endoskeletons to be in when in contact with water, moist air, or just really shaky movement. And by pop, I mean that anything inside will be completely crushed, unless it's an endoskeleton, which Evan is not. This is why in FNAF 3, that purple guy became Springtrap. He died in that suit running from the spirits he killed, and then had to spend like 30 years inside of that room suffering until he was released in FNAF 3, which takes place in 2023, in which, goddammit, I said I wouldn't get into the lore this much. Basically, this terrified kid was screaming for his life, and his tears activated the springs, causing this robot to bite off his frontal lobe, leading to his death. This would end up being one of the things that caused his dad to become a murderer, a psychopath. Just watched his son die in front of him. This can only end well. Anyways, the game ends with this heartbreaking scene of this kid watching his favorite plushies talk to him, and be taken from him seconds before his death. The last thing he hears: "I will put you back together." So yeah, that was an experience. FNAF 4 changed the series forever, which was interesting considering it was the last game of the series, but what this game did to the series and community was unmatched, so why don't we have a dive into it? And no, I'm not talking about the box. I don't care about the box. I'll let MatPat worry about the box. And also no, I'm not talking about FNAF World. Okay, so I wanted to talk about FNAF's real implications on the world, and although I thought I could sprinkle it throughout the video, I figured making one big chapter about it all would be fitting. The chapters just become really unfocused and messy when you jumble gameplay, stories, YouTube, books, reviews, and theories, especially theories like that whole dream theory MatPat started back during FNAF 4. For context, MatPat is easily the most popular online figure to cover FNAF theories, and has lots of say in the popular consensus of what the story of FNAF is, to not only the players, but also Scott himself at times. It genuinely kind of appeared like Scott was trying to take the FNAF series into an "it was all a dream" story. Of course, he then made 4 more last games in the series, and it changed completely every time, but theories like these are really just the beginning of FNAF's reach over the internet. Playthroughs such as those made by Markiplier, Daco, 8-Bit Ryan, Corix Kenshin, DanTDM, Fusion Z Gamer, and Razbowski completely skyrocketed FNAF's online popularity. Every game became more well-known than the last, leaving a massive impact on the internet, like these iconic animations.
I'm gonna kick your ass! Fucking God!
Wait, you saw the night guard?
Hey, that's the night guard right there!
No, that's just Freddy.
But you also had some other animations. Yeah, the FNAF community kind of bled into the kids' YouTube community, and it created absolute chaos, to say the least. But speaking of the community, it's one of the coolest and absolutely confusingly horrible communities ever. Scott was getting canceled down the line for his political views for some reason, but they would also come together to pull stuff off like this while also making more Rule 34 pictures and videos than the later Dream community. Speaking of which, FNAF mods in Minecraft were cool. I just kind of wanted to mention that. Actually, sticking with the theme of other games and the community, my absolute favorite aspect of the community is the fan games. These things genuinely gave voices to creative people who never would have been able to make games without FNAF. These games can range from small-scale 2D copies and massive 3D-inspired remastered stories that build off the original. The joy of creation took the community by storm with its crazy production, as did Five Nights at Candy's, Those Nights at Rachel's, and One Night at Flumpty's for their more laid-back but still horror and story-driven styles. However, let's go back to FNAF 4, because during this time, Scott shifted some of his focus to writing books, creating the Twisted One novel series. And it's genuinely crazy to me that this was the introduction to the name William Afton. I completely forgot that it took this long for that to be figured out. Basically, it introduced that Afton was the creator of the Freddy Fazbear's restaurant chain, with his friend Henry. They also made robots, blah blah blah. The books are also just pretty good, I must say. A little weirder, but a nice balance of good, weird, and not that. Oh, and then over the years he made like 15 more books or something. They're all right. I just find it impressive that he made that many. FNAF ended up getting even more recognition in the real world, such as deals with theme parks for FNAF-inspired horror attractions. Overall, it's just crazy how much reach FNAF gained over the years, completely changing how horror games work, inspiring famous titles like Bendy and the Ink Machine and Hello Neighbor. This was the peak of FNAF, as it was to supposedly come to an end once we all forgot about the game we don't speak of. But once upon a time, a simple phrase was spoken: he always comes back. And once upon another time, that very game we don't speak of got an update, teasing a man and his new animatronic, named Baby. This was one of the many upcoming teasers for FNAF 6, the sister location. Five Nights at Freddy's sister location was a complete 180 from how these games worked. You thought FNAF 4 was different? Well, Bonbon's gonna take you for a whirl. Plot-wise, this game was an incredible improvement. Gameplay-wise, some places were really cool and well thought out, but most were mediocre at best. For the past few games, Scott had been criticized for the games being not very scary. Like, sure, the first playthrough is pretty terrifying, but after a bit it's just a lot of nothing. And I think some sections in Sister Location were answers to these complaints, while some were just proving them right. Everything that had Ballora in it is terrifying, and no one can convince me otherwise. Her presence is horrifying no matter where you are. The first time you go in her room and you need to listen for her music, it's so scary when it sharply spikes in volume. Her section in Funtime Foxy's room is also scary as hell. Her confrontation with Baby here is chilling, along with her talking back in her own room. Funtime Freddy's introduction was really horribly executed, but pretty scary, although he was completely underutilized in the game as a whole. Funtime Foxy was also a big waste throughout, but someone used very well was Baby, which is especially surprising considering that we literally do not see her the entire game until the very last night, and yet she still has such a huge impact on the game. Initially, this seemed like a dumb idea, but story-wise, knowing our player is Michael Afton and Baby is possessed by his sister killed by Baby, which, let me mention again, was built by their own dad, this story point just did seem to fit with time. Foxy's entire room with the flashing mechanic is but I like the direction this game tries to go in with its focus on sound and the darkness. Some sections feel very restricting and rushed, while some just don't fit. However, easily the biggest disappointment to come out of this entire game was Night 4. Narratively, I get it. you got attacked. Baby hides you in a spring-lock suit so you can hide to see the scooper. Big whoop. But holy hell, the gameplay here is so horrible. In some situations, I sort of accidentally overshadowed the gameplay in focus for the story, but I just cannot with this freaking night. You spend the entire night, multiple minutes winding up these locks, shaking the suit, then winding up these locks, getting your personal space invaded, winding up more locks, wiggling, shaking the suit, winding more locks into more locks and more locks. Oh my god, Scott, more locks! Just show us the scooping room this way. Yes, but have Baby let us out of the suit and make this a newer, more unique level. You could have us let out, making this night a more exploration-based one with Foxy and Freddy on the loose. And to escape, we need to get into another secret room, maybe Baby's auditorium, make that an actual playable area. And if you don't like the escape situation, you could still make it a survival-based thing, where you need to move room to room or completing tasks to get around animatronics. It would be a great way to not only learn more about the location, but actually use these fun-time animatronics and have a tolerable fourth night. The fifth night is barely better. We just fix up Baby and then that scary Ballora encounter, and then meet Ennard, the amalgamation of every animatronic we met in this game together. The entire goal of these animatronics was to lure us here so that they can scoop out our insides and get into our bodies so that they can look human and leave this place, which they end up doing. This final scene is really well made, as is the ending, even though it's pretty cheesy. The game changed a lot about what we knew about the FNAF story, completely upending it altogether, really. Confirming things like Afton's existence and Evan, FNAF 4's character that got his head bit off, being his son. Over time, we would also learn that inside Baby is his daughter's body, along with in Ballora is his wife's body. How fun! So Michael Afton, this night guard, came face to face with two robots that have the corpses of his family members in them. We also learned that Michael didn't even die when Ennard left his body in this cutscene, leaving him to go to the location in FNAF 3 to burn down the place with his dad, Springtrap, inside. It all makes sense now. Hello. I needed to shoehorn this in somewhere. And it shows here, I don't know why. Basically what I wanted to say is that as the video progresses, I'm kind of getting more and more to the lore than I thought I would. And while it may seem like I'm giving the full picture, I'm just not doing that. I'm just scratching the surface of what is a very convoluted and in-depth, all-encompassing story that I could not nearly do justice to. That's why I wanted to recommend this video from Hyperdroid. It doesn't summarize the full story, but makes the Afton part, which is the main part, very concise and easy to follow. It's honestly just so crazy how committed the internet is to this story. Oh, another thing. I just kind of felt like apologizing to Scott. FNAF World, it was okay sometimes. I like the soundtrack a lot, and the Easter eggs in it were actually pretty fun. Oh, there was actually some pretty cool lore bits, and there were cool mechanics. Why did we hate on this game so much? Oh, okay, actually, last thing. I made this entire bit talking to you with this camera solely for the purpose, because in every one of these game review type videos, apparently I've had this trend where I've made a tier list of the game series. I don't know how this happened, but apparently it's been a trend this entire time. I did it with Skylanders, I did it with Plants vs. Zombies, so here I am again. So yeah, that's what this is, just this weird trend. Bam, right there. I don't know why I'm doing this, honestly. I didn't need to. I literally gave no explanation at all in this video to why VR is #1. I just thought it was a cool, all-encompassing game, but I wonder what the one at the bottom is. Anyways, in so many ways, this game was such an improvement and such a mistake. But it would soon be forgotten in the wake of FNAF 6 teasers. But if FNAF 6 would eventually get publicly indefinitely suspended from production, leaving us with one dabbing Chica-riddled book to send the series off. It was pretty upsetting knowing that Scott ended the making of what could have been a really cool continuation of the series. But hey, at least we got this one spin-off game called FNAF Pizzeria Simulator. I'm sure there's nothing important or cryptic in this game. You know, not anything that could make it a perfect ending for the series. That's where it's supposed to cut to the part where you learn it's an incredibly cryptic and perfect ending for the series. Alright, we've made it, finally, to the actual ending of the series. the totally real ending of the series that will absolutely, no questions asked, end after this game. Pizzeria Simulator appeared to be a letdown at first glance. It opens with a weird build-a-pizza minigame, and then, oh no, it all goes wrong, who would have guessed? But then we meet Scrap Baby. Baby and the rest of the sister location animatronics became Ennard, as I mentioned, but after months outside of Michael's body, they removed Baby from Ennard, leading her to become Scrap Baby independently. But let's ignore that, because this opening is incredible.
3,
2, 1.
Once we finish that up, we get an amazing peek into Scott's great sense of humor, and then we get to build our very own pizzeria. The environment is pretty funny, with actual playable and usable items like the ball pit, candy cadet, duck pool, and cursed maze of hell. It took 10 seconds of exploring to realize that this was no spin-off for the series. This was FNAF 6. You customize your pizzeria with games, lights, advertisements, and animatronics, all of your choosing across the game. Maybe even one day getting those sweet, sweet pickles. Every day after you shift, you must stay behind in this enclosed office with 2 vents on either side, where the animatronics randomly decided to... The more noise you make, the more they can hear you. Again, making amazing use of focusing and listening. Random pop-ups, printing papers, and downloading things all make a lot of noise, so you need to strategize as a key here. The jump scares aren't actually that scary. They're some of the weakest in the entire series, which sort of takes away from the fact that it's a pretty complicated and strategic-based game where you will probably die a lot, leading to a lot of jump scares, but that doesn't take away the fact that it's a pretty fun challenge. The designs of the animatronics are pretty cool. Nothing like Sister Location and FNAF 4, but you can't go wrong with Lefty. However, I will say they absolutely butchered Springtrap. Anyways, you can also salvage animatronics, but doing so leads them into the pizzeria, making every night more difficult. Again, the actual office portion is pretty generic, but the uncertainty and suspense in actually listening for the animatronics makes up for lots of it. As the game goes on, you eventually diverge into a direct path, leading to one of the many endings. That's one of the things I love about this game. It's not like one of those choose your adventure games, but it does put a lot of emphasis into your decisions. Salvaging animatronics, making noise, buying products, and your eventual ending. It all adds to a really fun experience. There are a lot of ways you can get fun endings, like going bankrupt and not salvaging any animatronic. But if you want the true ending of FNAF, you need to salvage every animatronic, letting them all into the restaurant, continuing your restaurant's growth, and most importantly, getting them all in one place. Henry, the man who created the Fazbear restaurants with William Afton, had watched his business turn to ruins as Afton became a murderer. Restaurant after restaurant closed down, and children went missing on his watch. As Afton continued his rampage of killing children, he eventually brought himself to murder Henry's daughter, the puppet. The animatronic invented by Henry as security for the children, but most importantly for his daughter, would come to break down in the rain searching for Henry's daughter. The combination would eventually lead to her soul possessing this animatronic. Henry, in an attempt to find her, created Lefty to track down and obtain the puppet, which worked. In her continuing attempt to let the souls of Afton's murderers rest, as she did years previously, she would come to this new pizzeria to finally free the last few. Scrap Baby, Afton's daughter searching for vengeance, her killer, and most importantly, a final gift. Scrap Freddy, the new Ennard containing Afton's wife's soul within, had come to the pizzeria looking for answers, but would soon find much, much more. Springtrap, or better known as William Afton, the murderer of tens, had come to this pizzeria harboring Henry's name after the 30 years he had spent locked, suffering in that restaurant. He was finally let out in FNAF 3, finding out that Henry, the man that had betrayed him decades ago, was still alive and still running the pizzerias he needed to end it. And finally, our player, once again being Michael Afton, had accidentally stumbled upon his job offering but came to understand this massive mission. During his job, they would all end up in one place, leaving Henry to put them to rest with one final badass speech.
This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then. So let me save you now. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
It was over. After the decades of horror, decades of tragedy and murder, they were free. Afton dead, Michael free, the spirits of their family resting, Henry finally at peace. The story of FNAF was finally, officially, happily done. Every victim of Afton's was able to rest now, as their killer rotted in hell, and they finally had their final party together. After Pizzeria Simulator comes Ultimate Custom Night, in which we trudge through challenge after challenge with 50 unique animatronics that can be set on a difficulty anywhere between 0 and 20. It may be a really well-made, fun, and crazily creative challenge on the surface, but behind it all, the realization is made. One spirit is yet to rest. Evan, the child killed in FNAF 4, Afton's youngest son. William was the one that truly killed him. And because of everything he had done, he could finally suffer the consequences. Our character in Ultimate Custom Night is none other than William Afton, as we live a brief instance of what was his purgatory, living his nightmare and facing his horrid creations forever. Of course, in the end, Evan does learn to let him go, but still, Afton got what he deserved and is dead now for good. This is how you end a series. It is perfect for this series. Gameplay-wise, graphic-wise, and horror-wise, it could have been far better, obviously. But what FNAF 6 did for this story is crazy. It's unmatched. The game is flawed, but the story could finally be put to rest, and we now, finally, for the last time, witness the last FNAF game. But nothing is perfect. It just seems like the games I cover on this channel just don't know when to stop. Skylanders saw Imaginators, PvZ saw Battle for Neighborville, and now FNAF sees Security Breach. Of course, we had the VR game before this, but that really felt like a natural progression. Just a sort of fun send-off, a nice little love letter. Except for the fact that the game introduced the Afton glitch. Ugh. If you were gonna continue the FNAF series, make it new, make it different, do what the books do. Don't just lazily say, okay, Afton's dead, but why don't we just make a glitchy code that is basically just his mind but in a computer? Ooh. Anyways, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach was finally released in late 2021 after many delays. And it's such a goddamn mess! It just gets worse and worse as the game goes on. Where do I even start? How about the fact that it was delayed by like a year and a half or something, and it is still a glitchy mess that clearly was not playtested once. Every AI is dog shit. The map randomly unloads at time. The saves are horrible. Basically, not a single place is off limits because of how easy it is to glitch through walls. You can duplicate the Montgomery Gator over and over by walking up and down a staircase. The story is so half-assed, with the ending coming out of nowhere feeling so incomplete. It's so easy to just get lost with the number of places in this game, most of them being worthless side things, while the actual path you were going on is completely unknown throughout the game. The cameras, a defining aspect of this series, is completely worthless. Oh yeah, it's also just nearly never scary. I understand the original series was toned down a bit for younger audiences, but holy hell, Steelwolf, my 7-year-old brother is able to understand this game with ease. But also the size and coloring of this game just makes it so not horror. In the game, he plays Gregory, a homeless kid trying to escape Freddy's mega pizzaplex. But in this game, you actually get help from Freddy himself. Gregory ends up being hunted by Roxy, Chica, and Monty, along with the security bots, both Music Man bots, Sun, Moon, Endoskeletons, Janitor bots, and a killer rabbit lady corrupted by that Afton glitch. I haven't even covered the actual game yet, and I'm already confused. Okay, so let me get the easy part out of the way. The stuff I actually like. The entire Sun Moon part was pretty cool. Great character, amazing concept, and pretty alright execution. It's literally the one place that successfully scared me every time. In fact, if it weren't for the glitches, this would be one of the scariest parts of the series as a whole. Both of the Music Men are nice, with the little one being creepy, and the big one just being outright cool. The Pizzaplex looks absolutely incredible, even though it's so goddamn confusing. The voice acting is genuinely incredible, with Freddy's voice actor carrying the show. And I honestly enjoy the idea of dismantling all the animatronics. It just needs to be improved in literally every way. They should have all 3 actually been destroyed before 6 for starters. And then instead of just making them come back with slight alterations, except for Monty for some reason, why don't you actually make the alterations impactful to the game, or just not have them come back? Also, maybe actually make a story excuse for why the hell we're dismantling these animatronics. It makes no sense other than unlocking Easter eggs. But by far the best thing about this game is Freddy. They gave him a character. They made the robot a person, and it works. He is useful. He aids the story. He is funny even when he can't go into the arcade for literally no reason. I can't help but laugh and accept the excuse they gave because it's so Freddy. The only improvement necessary would have been more lines. Actually, you know what? Just any lines with the other animatronics. You know, furthering all 4 of their characters. Anyways, back to the negatives. It's glitchy, the stories are nonsense, and the secrets and Easter eggs, while a few, like Bonnie and callbacks were nice, are mostly just random, jumbled together pieces of garbage. The entire canon story is that Gregory gets locked inside, tries to escape, so he goes to the daycare to meet with Freddy, turns on the generators that are inside the children's play structures, and leaves with Freddy. We serve Chica pizza, and then the night guard catches us. This is Vanessa, or Vanny, that killer rabbit. Her entire character was so clearly cut last minute, and she is completely wasted. However, I will say our introduction to her Vanny side was pretty good and genuinely terrifying. Anyways, Freddy's jumped, we fix his communications to get into parts and service where Moon catches him. After going through a very original endoskeleton section, we are able to find Freddy, fix him up, and learn that we can upgrade him with his friend's parts. But come on, Freddy doesn't want us hurting the other animatronics. So of course, naturally, we kill every one of them off, while of course defacing public property, breaking and entering, tampering with privately owned robots, murdering Vanessa depending on the ending you go with, and probably a lot more crimes. The true ending ends with Afton's glitchy thing being released in the Springtrap suit that apparently wasn't even burnt in FNAF 6. And we fend him off until the place burns down and this living amalgamation of past animatronics just eats him. The end. In my opinion, as dark as it might get, the ending should have seen no final fight because the one we got is astonishingly horrible. Also, Afton should not have been here at all, but alright, fine. There are 2 options here. 1, you keep this final fight aspect, but you make it bearable, and then have Vanny be the actual villain here instead of Afton. Okay, it doesn't have to be Vanny, but definitely don't make it Afton. Like, it could be that blob thing we saw, or maybe a new Ennard-esque thing where the other 3 animatronics have combined into one to take us down. I don't know, but the other option is that you keep this Afton glitch thing. Alright, fine, you got me. But do not use this stupid final fight part. Instead, have the final scene be Freddy being taken over completely. Of course, Gregory would still be inside, so if you really want to cement the horror part of this, you could have him like screaming to get out or something. And then in some cool reveal, you could show that all 4 animatronics have been completely taken over by this Afton glitch. It would be a really cool setup for a sequel that would probably function much more similarly to the previous games, with these 5 after us. Hell, you could even connect it to Sun and Moon, the security bots, even the endoskeletons. You could change this ending however you wanted, and it would still be better than what they did. My god, this game is a train wreck. Don't get me wrong, playing it is so much fun, but taking 2 seconds to think about what you just played ruins it all. But it could also be the fact that I just played this game back to back with the rest of the series, which is an amazingly written and connected time. However, no matter what I say, public consensus that it's great, or at least I would assume that since it's the most popular and viewed FNAF game ever. It's conquered the internet, what can I say? In the middle of production, Scott actually quit making FNAF games and handed this over to Steel Wool Studios to finish, which I'm just going to blame for the reason why it's so horribly made, but whatever. At the very least, this video can end on a note where Scott is happily watching his series grow to insane heights from the side. But no matter how much I sugarcoat this, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but FNAF World was better. I like Security Breach leaps and bounds more, but objectively speaking, Security Breach is just such a dumpster fire that has completely ruined what the original 7 created. Five Nights at Freddy's is a one-of-a-kind experience, and it's pretty crazy to think about where it started, a small 2D indie title released by a man on the verge of quitting. And now, this series can be found everywhere with a massive cultural impact on YouTube and in gaming as a whole. The series has inspired thousands of individuals to begin creating their own games. Some created fan games, some created altered experiences, and some went on to create a completely new world with their inspiration. And some were Hello Neighbor. Scott's story is just as impactful as his series, coming full circle with his statement regarding his departure from the series, mere months after the series was officially concluded with the way he saw fit. Scott is one of the smartest and most skilled indie developers I could name, and genuinely has a more telling and inspiring story than people like Notch. Although his career has ended, I still believe Scott and FNAF will go far, even though the series should have ended with Ultimate Custom Night. I am still excited to spend more time with the FNAF gang. What the series has done for people, YouTube, and the internet as a whole can only be rivaled by Minecraft, Among Us, and like the Wii. And at the very least, this is just simply the beginning of a new chapter with a more thriving fanbase than ever, all ready for the next adventure. Thanks for watching.